So today I wanted to go and go over some of the questions that keep coming up in regards to Nāmarūpa, to be exact. Questions that come up about Paticcasamuppāda, so it will be a continuation of that in a sense. And this is the inner world of the Dhamma. This is the essence, Paticcasamuppāda. In Pali, there's a term called idapacchaya. Idapacchaya, because of this, because of the cause that this represents. With this, that comes to be. That itself is Paticcasamuppāda. So we've thus far talked about, from what I recall, the role of contact. Briefly, I mentioned Nama. Briefly, I've mentioned the role of Nāmarūpa to Vijnana in different talks in the past. But I'm going to try to address, well, let's start, let's do that. Let's go with Nāmarūpa. So this term, Nāmarūpa, obviously it's part of the Paticcasamuppāda. So we have the 12 links. So we have from ignorance, which I like to call it willful ignoring, you end up getting sankharas. Then because of that, you get vijnana. And because of that, you have Nāmarūpa. Then following that, you have salayatana, which are the 6 senses, bases. And then because of these 6, you have contact. Because of contact, you have feeling. Because of feeling, you have craving. Because of craving, you have, let's go there, grabbing or clinging. Because of grabbing, you have the desire to become, or bhava. Because of bhava, you have jati, which is birth. Because of jati, you have old age, sickness, death. And following, because of that, you have all kinds of suffering, pain, sorrow, distress, lamentation, despair. So here, what Nāmarūpa, when I'm referring to this Nāmarūpa, what we're talking about is its role here, as we see within the Paticcasamuppāda. Here, you see it. I wanted to give a diagram to just kind of see temporally, even though there's no time in Paticcasamuppāda, irrespective of what commentators have turned it into. So there is no time. So please do not look at it temporally, even though I mentioned the term temporally, but just to kind of give us a graphic representation. That's what I meant. it might even look like it's a linear process taking place, but it is anything but linear. Okay, there's a lot of overlapping. In fact, any of these, so here I'm mentioning we're going to be, I want to just address Nāmarūpa, but in essence, any of these you can use to penetrate into the Dhamma. Any. Because they all have within them the structures. Because ignorance is found in each of these. In each is also found what? Dukkha. In each, there's also longing, yearning, which perpetuates dukkha. And in each is also found nirodha, cessation of dukkha. So each of these has the Four Noble Truths. By the way, there's also the magga, or the path, also found within each of these. So please do not think that, oh, I have to go through the first. Oh, no. I started at the Nāmarūpa, or I'm at the contact, phassa level. No, I have to first figure out the salayatana, or the sixth sense basis, how they are figured out in this whole schema. No, you don't. Please do not complicate things. So this is an attempt here to also share with you that, unlike what people have, in the past, made it seem like, as I was mentioning, that this Paticcasamuppāda itself is broken up into 3 lifetimes. So they were initially looking at portions of this structure to have to do with, basically, one would be the previous life. Okay, so they were talking in terms of the 3 lives. Okay, theory. In fact, not just theory, Venerable Buddha Ghosha and others, whoever followed him, to this day you have this. You have this, even I've heard professors, monastics, or those who call themselves scholarly monastics, or even meditating monks, believing in this schema. Why? Because it's an unquestionable position that many, unfortunately, hold towards this 3 lives theory, and it is absolutely, completely wrong. It has nothing to do with Lord Buddha's teaching. Okay? But, so they look at ignorance, sankhara, even vijnana, and they say, well, the person doesn't have any control over these. How could I have control? Obviously, sankharas are in the past, and the results from the past that I have to deal with, but I can't do anything with them in this life to kind of eliminate them in the past. So these were generated in the past. Who knows how far back? So I have no control over that. So, and then they talk about the other factors like birth, for example, or even bhava, and obviously what is to come with old age, sickness, and death. And they look at that as if it is a reference to old age, sickness, and death in a forthcoming, in a future life, as if this life does not include old age, as if this life we're not facing sickness. I mean, the person is alive, they're thinking, they're talking. So, but nevertheless, what they do is they actually will go ahead and chunk this, cut this portion out, and they will refer to this as life number 3. This was life number 1, and here you have life number 2, which is the current one. So previous, present, and future. So they refer to the principle of dependent origination, 12 links, as referring to 3 lifetimes. This is absolutely wrong. Okay, this is wrong. Why? Because the Dhamma is akaliko. It is timeless. So none of this 3 lives nonsense. But that's what we have still today. People still going with. You have books written. Fortunately, we've had some wonderful teachers also. There were few, nevertheless, they have been clearing up the dust from the eyes of those who are interested to and really longing to understand the Dhamma and go beyond what the commentaries have to say. So this eliminates all that nonsense about 3 lives, because it has nothing to do with the Dhamma. The Dhamma is akaliko. So please bear that in mind. So you and your choices in this life, with the actions that you commit and the Sangvega with which you continue to practice, can allow you to penetrate any of these and look at them and find Nirodha through them. Why? Because of the 4 Noble Truths, as I was mentioning in the beginning. So let us go back here. So I want to just let me just so basically, now that you have an idea of where I'm coming from, let's go with discussing Nāmarūpa. Now, one of the, I think it was the first whiteboard that I was trying to do here, I talked about Sanya. Sanya is, loosely termed in English, perception. Okay? Perception is key in ruining your life. Perception is the reason why we are in dukkha land, life to life to life to life, ad infinitum. This is, after all, one of the reasons why Lord Buddha states in the Magandiya Sutta, from the Sutta Nipata, Sanya viratassa nisanti gantha, panya vimuttassa nisanti moha. For the person who has detached oneself from sanya, from perception, there cannot be any more bonds, bondage, being tied down, shackled. Why though? Perception is how we see the world, right? So here is where we can dive into as to what is it that we are perceiving, what is dictating our perceptions. But we cannot discuss nama before talking about rupa, or in relation to rupa, because there's no hyphen here between nama rupa. Nope, it's just nama rupa, one word, right? So just to clarify here, again, I might have mentioned this before. So rupa And let's divide them into Nama. So we'll write them in reverse. So here we have Rupa. Rupa, what is Rupa? Well, loosely termed, it is form. Things that have to do with form. Make them seem relatable, tangible, something that, a quality that brings out something in it, that it being the thing that is being experienced. It'll get clearer, I hope, as we go on. And Nama is name. Name. Bhante Nyananda calls this Nama being the formal name. Formal name. He loved to play with words, but there's so much depth in them. And Rupa is nominal form. So so basically, Rupa. We have the four primaries. Okay, the four primaries are earth, water, fire, and air or wind. Okay, these are the four primaries. And then you have also the sperm and the egg of mother and father, and then you have the food, the rice, whatever, these are terms that we find in the Nikayas. Lord Buddha is explaining Rupa in brief. So the food that with which one nourishes oneself, sustains one's form, that is part of Rupa. Okay? Now, as far as Nama group, these are called the form group. So let me just add that here. Form group. Okay. And then we have the name group. So what is included in the name group, this is key, because unfortunately, oftentimes people have a wrong idea, or they do the designation of Nama using consciousness, for example. They throw in there as being consciousness. I've seen people use Sankara as being part, which basically puts them back into the five aggregates. Basically, it's like a misnomer. So Nama is a substitute for the five aggregates. That's a mistake, because we have a clear explanation of Nama, including or excluding, in this case, the Vijnana or the Sankharas even. So what do we have? We have five in them. All right, so we have feeling, Vedana. Okay, so well, let me just do it in English. Feeling, that's one. Two, perception. Three, intention. Four, contact. And five, attention. Okay, so this makes it the Nama group or name group. All right, so one thing we need to be aware of in the Dhamma of Lord Buddha's dispensation, we have one term representing several things depending on the context. So a person looking at this will say, well, so you mean to say, Bhante, that here the sanya that you're talking about is different than the one that we see in the five aggregates? And because you're saying Nama group is different than the five aggregates, How about this perception that you're referring to here, number 2, that I just delineated within the Nama group? Is that a different perception? No. We don't have to complicate things. So sometimes the terms that we use, this is language. We're in the territory of language. The mind functions with language and syntax. Unfortunately, the Dhamma has been equated with language, and that's where the problem lies, primarily. So we use language as best as we can to capture what it is that is taking place in the mind. So here, one would even get away with calling the whole Nama group perception, in fact, in my opinion. So you can take the Nama and just call it the perception. But to know Nama, to dissect it, depending on analysis that you might engage in, to understand phenomenon as it's occurring, then you need to know the roles that are taking place, such as experientially, there's a feeling involved, there is a perception involved, there is intention involved, there is contact definitely involved, there is attention being given to the whole process. So to simplify things, we use the term perception here, okay, if that makes sense. So because what we ultimately have to deal with in that sense is the perception of Rupa, or the form. Okay, so in one word, if we were to use perception here, perception is trying to, like I was saying last time, like with the eyeball, right? It's looking, there's attention there, right? So you're looking at what? At form, which is going to be the next thing I want to discuss. So you are looking at form. Now, this does not necessarily mean just with, in this case, the sense space of the eye or the eye perception. No, not just that. How you're becoming cognizant of the world of form. All right. So, having said this, what can we learn about form? Because, you know, these are the 4 primaries. Chatu Mahabhuta in Pali, the great elements you can think of. So what is the earth element? Okay, in the earth element, basically, it's not the earth itself. It's not solidity. It's not the earth you go and hold in your hands outside in your garden, or you know, a piece of rock. Not necessarily that, but nevertheless, there is a representation of the earth element within it. Why? Because anything that has the element or the characteristic or trait of being hard or soft, we're referring to the earth element. Okay? Anything that is malleable, it's a fluidity, there's a cohesiveness, the quality to be dissolved. So anything that is, let's say, fluid, cohesive, means it's bonds or binds. So it has that, or dissolves, breaks apart from each other. Those qualities are included within the water element. Okay, and for the fire, you have the heat, and the opposite of that, cool, the cold. That would be the fire element quality. And then you come to the air or wind, vayu. That has to do with motion, expansion. Inflation actually could be one. Motion is part of that too, because the wind, right? So that would be the air or wind element. Now, one would think that, oh, these are references to the world around us. Yes and no. Obviously, the example of holding a piece of rock, that's very present, right? So you can touch it, you can feel it, you can see it. What is hot, what is cool, you might see the effects of them, right? The air molecules, the way light hits them. If you have a hot surface like a metal or the top of the roof of a car in a place like Arizona or in some desert area, what you have then is you will see a mirage. Well, you're not seeing heat, but you're seeing the effect of it, right? Just like in the case of wind, you cannot see wind, you'll see the effect of the wind upon nature around them. So there's a quality to it. And similarly, when it comes to emotions, one might be able to describe one's emotion as hot. For example, anger is seen as something hot. Or if a person is becoming, like in the case of couples therapy, there's terms that we used or people use still, obviously, stonewalling or becoming indifferent. When you would ask a patient, they would say, what do you feel? I feel cold. Like what? Like, after some probing, they will say, I feel indifferent. I feel cold. So now we're not talking about actual substances like fire or water being hot or cold. You're talking about things that are not tangible, but you're using references. What are we doing then? We are going over the form of the experience. So this is you can think of it as a substrate, as the landing zone, or I'm trying to use different terms. We got interrupted there for some reason, but I wanted to just continue on. The importance of looking at the form group as integral, as extremely. It's the base camp. It's the way that we can establish as to what it is that we constantly hear this reference to Nāmarūpa, Nāmarūpa. Well, what is Nāmarūpa? Well, Nāmarūpa, or at least the one that really stands out when we mention Nāmarūpa, usually the reference is for perception, as I was mentioning. But perception of what? The Rupa portion. Well, what is that Rupa portion? That is the intelligible life, the substantive life, at least how in our ignorance we perceive the world to be. What I'm referring to is object-subject relationship. So object and subject. Okay, so this would be another, you're not going to find a reference to this in the suttas, of course, but this is my way of also trying to understand or explain Nāmarūpa. So here, object, I'm using it as a reference for form or Rupa, and the subject would be the name or Nama. Okay, so when you are the subject, then remember the I that I did here, or the perception. So what it is doing is you are looking for the behavior of whatever it is that you're looking at, whatever it is that you are perceiving. you are becoming aware of. You're pondering, you're thinking about. Now, Nama is the only thing that can actually be knowing what the behavior of the form is. So Nama has the ability, form cannot. Form is in other words, is inert. Inert. So here, I think I need to address a little bit more about the form part. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to erase. Okay, good. Open up some real estate for us. Maybe it's even this. So Rupa, or form, cannot function if there isn't this quality to it that in English we can use the term resistance. Okay, or bouncing off. In fact, I like to call that, to use that, bouncing off. When something bounces off something, an object, just like, for example, a bat flying through a cave, it uses sonar, it uses its sounds, and its ears are so sensitive that it can pick up the sounds coming in. So if the bat flying, so if it's in a cave, it's sending out this sonar, and then if it sees an object, that's how it catches its prey. Part of the sound waves will pass beyond that object, whichever one that doesn't get hit or is not met with resistance from the object, or it doesn't bounce off the object, will go beyond, right? They will pass right from the edges of it, so surrounding space. However, the object, if it is there and the waves of sound that are traveling touch it, meaning in Pali it's patigha. Patigha is the resistance or the bouncing off. So then what will happen is it will bounce back to the bat, and the bat will know that there is an object, there is a prey, there is a wall, and it will behave accordingly. So this bouncing off, okay, is patigha. Nama comes to know form or rupa thanks to the quality of patigha, or the bouncing off, or the resistance. So similarly, when, let's say, you have a flower, okay, and the flower has different colors, right? So the sun will send out its rays, and we see, the visible light spectrum, Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. So those are the colors that will be absorbed, actually sent back, bounced back to everything around it. So if you have an object that is, let's say, pink or blue, that means that it is able to absorb all the other colors except for that. So it's sending out, it's not able to absorb that color, and that is what you're seeing from the visible light spectrum. Okay, so if it's, I'm getting into science a little bit, but this, I hope that it is making it more relevant to us in this living experience. So when the light is hitting an object, let's say it's a blue object, that means the, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Let's say you're seeing something that is green, let's say a plant. That means the plant is able to absorb Biv and Roy, and it will send back to you rather, the green colors. That's how you see an object, because it is able to absorb. So materials are made in manufacturing and elsewhere that if they want to show a certain color, the object, to be in a certain color, all the other pigments are absorbed, all the other colors rather are absorbed in it except for that. So it's bounced back, just like the echo of the bat is bounced back to it the moment that there is an object to resist it, patigha. So I hope this is making more sense to you, because this is essential for us to understand. Hence, we have the four primaries, the Chatu Mahabhuta, the great elements, right? Of which I mentioned: earth, water, fire, and air. And no, these are not eternal, because as we've seen in the Aganya Sutta and Aganya Sutta and the Satta Surya Sutta from the Anguttara Nikaya, numerical discourses, which I've covered with you in the past, Lord Buddha describes how the 7 suns will appear one after the other after long time distances between them. And eventually, even these 4 elements will disappear. This is in reference to anicca, of course. So, anicca is what balances the equation. So, but I want to come back to the relationship between these two. That is Rupa and Nama. This. Okay. Given that there is resistance, now that we have an appreciation of the term patigha, we then go into understanding, or trying to understand, how is it that we get to see the behavior of Rupa. So here is Rupa, the behavior of which is what is being picked up by Nama. Now, I mentioned ignorance. The presence of ignorance clouds the mind. Ignorance itself, as I mentioned it a few times, it's avidya is willful ignoring. What does that refer to? Willfully ignoring. That means there is no sati. Sati is absent. That is avidya. Or it's misplaced sati. Or it's mindless. By the way, sati being absent is asati. But when we are referring to misplaced attention, in essence, we're talking about ayoniso manasikara. So ayoniso manasikara, we're dealing with attention here, aren't we? So when in the presence of ignorance, running, basically, when ignorance is running the show, it is sitting at the wheel, at the helm, then what is happening is, and the mind is mindless, this Nama group becomes our window to the world with flawed vision. Somebody had forgotten to wipe the windows. Why? Because it is ignorant. Why? Because, for example, here, perception, if I remove perception here and just isolate that, it might be functioning out of memory, which is another term for sanya, by the way. So if the person is functioning on flawed memory or impressions of some event, well, guess what? Their nama then is smudged by, stained by, tainted with. The nama now has glaucoma, has some type of eye disease, ocular disease. I'm using here analogies, of course. But in essence, when you have a feeling, right, which is another part of the Nama group. I hope, by the way, now it's making more sense. The division of these and being placed under the umbrella of Nama, as Venerable Sariputta does explain it beautifully in the Samma Sati Sutta from the Majjhima Nikaya, where we do have this whole setup of the five properly representing the Nama group in the presence of memory or what you are intending, right? Which is another factor of Nama group. Let's say from the Noble Eightfold Path, you have right intention or right thought, Samma Sankappa. What if it is Miccha Sankappa? What if it is wrong intention? What happens then? Nama is affected. So memory, how somebody had, let's say, stifled you or hurt you or, I don't know, did you wrong or something, stole from you or hurt you. If you're working from that premise, then Nama is again affected. How about the contact? Remember the behavior part? Rupa cannot know behavior. Nama can. But Nama cannot know behavior without the presence of contact. Unfortunately, contact itself, if it is not working together with Yoniso Manasikara, which is the opposite of Ayoniso Manasikara, then if contact is basically now, just like the window, dirty and flawed, and it's drenched in ignorance and vile or basically miccha, wrong, then you're not going to be seeing rupa, are you? The rupa that you are seeing is in fact not rupa at all, because you're seeing what you want to see in rupa. The behavior that you're seeing in this object started in you, in your mind, in your expectations. Why? Because you have taken the thing as real. There's a term in Pali called ghana. Ghana means compact. Ghana, not the African country, Ghana, but Ghana, it's compact. Like something that is fixed. So you can call it even atta, the whole thing about atta. Oh, this thing, this object is real. You over there, me over here, it, this, that, versus that. So the two pegs, right, that connect each other. So compact is how we see the world. But what if the view, remember the eye with which you're looking at the object or the experience? What if it is myopic? What if it is obscured? What if it is blindfolded? What if it's got a different hue? I was mentioning about colors, right? The color that gets bounced back to us is the color that did not get absorbed. So what if it doesn't fit our worldview, the narrative? Then we're not going to see the object for what it is. We're not going to be true to the behavior. You're not going to be making conclusions about reality as it's supposed to be. Why? Because you have taken it as compact. And in Pali, the term is ghana. Versus seeing it as simply a heap of things, as layers, layers upon layers upon layers upon layers. I mentioned in program of application in graphics, a very famous one of the best, if not the best, is Photoshop. And when I came across it, I was like, I used to paint. I mentioned that, I think, last time somewhere. And when you work as a painter, as an artist, you work on a canvas, let's say, you apply different layers upon each other. But once it's done, let's say oil or acrylic, you cannot go back and fix the bottom layer, let's say. So the digital format came in, the digital graphic designs came in, and they completely opened up a new vista of possibilities. Now the artist no longer had to be stuck with the stuck canvas. It shows to you. You can look at it not just from the top, let's say looking at a painting or a picture, you're looking at it from the top, basically. It's like you looking down at something that's laid on the ground. But in the case of a graphic application, design application, you will look at it from the top, but then what you do is you can look at it from the side as well, profile, and then you see the actual layers, the heap that Lord Buddha is talking about, rasi. So rasi sanya and ghana sanya. So rasi sanya allows you to see the layers, boom, 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 that are involved in this. So this gives you a bigger perspective of what it is that I'm looking at. So it's not this only. So suddenly you start seeing what? Relationships. And this Dhamma is all about relationships. It's looking at patterns. The Paticcasamuppāda, or the principle of, or the dependent origination, is the pattern of idappacchaya. Lord Buddha recognized the pattern involved. Because of this, that's going to happen, Lord Buddha said. If you remove this, then that's going to cease. By the ceasing of this, that ceases. By the introduction of this, by the origination of this, then that originates. If you don't want death, then make sure you cease birth, cease from being born, that is. So here is where we can really see that the Nama group simply is the constituent group that discovers the very behavior, the behavior of the form. Okay? So the primary job of Nama is to know. Right? So in other words, you can think of it like Nama is trying to name the experience. But you cannot name an experience without there being attention, there being contact at the very least. I was mentioning here, contact has to be made in order for you to know that there is Rupa. Just like the bat flying in the cave needs to make contact. How? Through Paticca, as I was mentioning. Paticca is the bouncing off. Bouncing off. You need to become observant or aware that this thing is there. But we also have to understand that it's so easily imperceptible. It's almost like ghost. Rupa itself is like ghost. In one of the lectures that Bhante Nyananda was mentioning about Rupa, he says, it's like trying to capture a ghost. How so? Because we need to really activate our sati to such a level that it is able to see constantly, that it is able to observe our motions, our four postures: sitting, standing, walking, lying down. Lord Buddha called that kaya anupassana, the ability to look and see and understand, view, closely scrutinize, watch, and slow things down. By slowing things down, you will no longer be susceptible at looking at form or rupa as something compact. It can't be. Why? Because as you're slowing down, you're seeing step by step what's happening. I was here in this room, but now I'm in that room, meaning this room I was in is now that room. What happened? There was A, there was B, there was C, there was D, etc. What I mean by this is there is a progression, there is a movement, there is a movement from one state to the next, which gives us the illusion that there's a strip of, it's seamless, but it's not. It's not. It's just the impression. It's like a strip of film. I mentioned before, a strip of film is it's at 24 frames per second, right? So that means 24 strips of film have to pass in front of the eyes, etc., for the eye to not capture the thing that's called strobing. Strobing is when there's a break. So if you go from 24 frames a second to, let's say, 19 frames per second, that's how fast they will go in front. But what that will do is you're going to catch it like broken up pieces. So the animation will not move. Your eyes are going to, your brain is going to say something's wrong with this picture, with this. It's no longer a film. It no longer buys it as a smooth reality. So the Satipatthana removes that mirage. it exposes the flaws of so-called reality. When you're walking meditation, there is intending, right? There is, you can say, action and then moving, right? Moving can be lifting the heel or leaning the body in one way or the other forward, right? And then whatever follows after that. So, but then you see, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so many steps, all of which look as compact. And that is Rupa, which we interpret as the world, the world, the world, this versus that, you versus me. So the whole point of the Satipatthana, you see here, as I was mentioning about the Paticcasamuppāda, it's not just some principle, some fancy principle that is so difficult for many people to, well, who can blame them? I struggled for years. I was like trying to understand, okay, Venerable Sariputta says, and Lord Buddha says, he who sees the Dhamma sees the Paticcasamuppāda, he who sees the Paticcasamuppāda sees the Dhamma. Wow, it's that important. In fact, if you remove Paticcasamuppāda, the Dhamma falls apart. That's why the Dhamma is life, because everything is Paticcasamuppāda. It's all a matter of causality. But how would you know? Because life is real, right? The life that you have, the relationships, the things, the existence, the resistances, the patigha or the bouncing off, are convincing you that this life is real. Well, that's why we sit and meditate. Meditation starts by putting a dent on this whole mechanism. Why? Because it reveals it, shows it for what it is. Because you now see Rupa Sanya. Perception of form. Has everything to do whether you are in the presence of sati. In other words, is yoniso manasikara there or not? So when we meditate, see, meditation and Paticcasamuppāda, understanding Paticcasamuppāda, are not two distinct different things. They are part and parcel of each other. You cannot know Paticcasamuppāda intellectually, really know and understand it. You have to practice meditation. That's why, or meditation, not just sitting, by the way. That's why I was giving lifting. By the way, the reference there was for walking meditation. I'm sorry, sometimes my brain is moving fast, too fast for my hand to catch it. So in walking meditation, you're doing just that, slowing things down. Okay? So, but how can you slow things down? Some people actually focus on slowing the body down. Meanwhile, the mind is going at 100 million miles a second. Even in meditation retreats, like people do walk slow often, much slower than they normally do, right? But my concern is, where is the mind? Who's at the helm? What is Nama doing? So please, when I'm giving these, I'm trying my best to give a different perspective or a different angle of looking at the wound. Basically, here it's, the wound I'm referring to is Nāmarūpa. Why a wound? Because Lord Buddha was the surgeon, and he was helping us, trying his best to remove the suffering. Oh, by the way, Nāmarūpa is dukkha. Excuse me. By not understanding the role of Nāmarūpa, that means we have to cut it, Nāmarūpa, and look at it individually. So here, my attempt has been to look at the tangibility, the relevant nature of Nāmarūpa. It is not another term. It is not another concept. It is not something in its own somewhere that it's a conceptual abstraction, something out there that only basically it's cut off from your life. No, it has everything to do with the way you live and you understand, you interpret, you relate to life itself. So Rupa as form, and then Rupa's behavior. This is how we write in therapy, behavior, by the way. So that's behavior in writing forms and stuff, notes. And then you have Nama, or name. So through the understanding, the role of the knower in this case, which is Nama, the perceiving of the behavior, and then we come back again to understand the role of this perceiving, how it's important. It dictates everything about the world that we see. This is the world, basically. This is the world. For all intents and purposes, right? The perception, the sanya, how the sanya is working. That's why sanya, Lord Buddha said in this Sutta Nipata, as I was mentioning the verse, sanya virattassa nasanti gantal, for the person who has detached oneself, has understood, has uncovered, the jig is up for perceiving, for such a person, there cannot be bonds. There is no more world as such to speak of. That's why the Arahant has Anidassana Vijnana, which means non-manifestative consciousness. Non-manifestative. That means they're aware that it is bouncing off, but there's nobody to actually register it upon. That means the object-subject relationship that you find in a normal putujjana, a person who doesn't know, doesn't understand the Paticcasamuppāda, doesn't understand the function of how Yoniso Manasikara is an unraveler of this delusion, of this Maya, of this big picture show called life, the world. For the Arahant, whom we call the saint, whom we call the fourth level awakened one, the Arahant, it doesn't register anymore. But they're very much alive. They don't take things personally. They understand, they see all that. They see the world for what it is. Sankharas don't rule them. Sankharas are the habitual drives, you can think of them as the preparations, the things that lead us to do things. and their biggest supporter, Sanya, isn't there. The go-between, the liaison is cut off. The Arahant is free to see things for what they are. Why? Because they have Yoniso Manasikara. Because they are understanding. Of course they perceive. They have the 5 aggregates still, you know. The 5 aggregates, they're there. The 6 senses are there. But they have to live still. And you cannot live without the 5 aggregates. You cannot therefore live without the 6 senses to understand, to relate, to eat, to speak, to give a Dhamma talk, to listen, to hear. So they still have to function, but they have Mahasati, the great sati, everywhere they go, everything they do. Yoniso Manasikara is with them. Wise, radical attention, reflection. And for such a person, they see all of this. Because the 4 postures, while they're awake, they're so alive. And in the Dhammapada, it says how you can even spot them from afar without speaking to them. Why? Because it shows. It shows. This is not something intellectual. To be able to see all this, this is not intellectual for such a person. But we're working towards that, right? It takes time. Every time you have a moment of sati, what you're doing is you're starting to look at the layers, rasi sanya. But you will not be able to do any of that without understanding, at least on a rudimentary, on a very, very basic level, that this thing called life has Nama in there, and then there's Rupa, and my level of understanding has everything to do with seeing Rupa for what it is. Because the world is always going to be making contact. So long as you're alive with the 6 senses, contact is here. Contact is always going to be there so long as you are recipient. And the world is going to be communicating with you. But how are you picking it up, that paticca? How are you picking up that bouncing off? So this is crucial because it even answers that question as to why do I need to practice sila? Without sila, you won't know what is right from wrong. It doesn't work. You need to gain virtue. You live a Dhammic life. Dhammic life means natural life. Natural life means you don't do something that you do not want to be done to you, to others. Virtue also means, as I said, Dhammic lifestyle that is Dhammically based upon the Dhamma. That involves purity in your heart, of citta, of understanding. But, as Lord Buddha says, the upakileshas, the defilements, they come, the obstructions, they come, the obscurations come and cloud that brilliance. So when we're practicing sati, we are practicing essentially the discovery of that brilliance. So this is also a message of hope, that no matter how much you're struggling with your practice or with your determination to be practicing in the first place, it's all connected. The Dhamma, as I mentioned, the Paticcasamuppāda are not about 3 different lifetimes. Absolutely not. The Dhamma is akaliko, and it is very personal. It's about you, about your life. And I hope this, my voice is failing, I think. So please make the most of this, and I hope this has been helpful. And I'll try to answer some more questions as they come up, and as I have the time and energy, hopefully to do so in the coming weeks. So may you all be well. Sukhi Hotu.